ready to kick things off. So again, this is a super exciting topic. It's really a transformational launch that we just released only a few weeks ago. So we brought along Matt Graney, our Chief Product Officer. Matt, I'll let you do a quick intro.
Thanks, Chris. Yes, I'm Matt Graney. I've been with the company for 9 years and, leading product the whole time, all the product management, user experience design, research, and technical documentation. So really glad to be able to share all this with you today.
Awesome. And I am Chris Ferraro. I'm on the product marketing side, and I'm working specifically on our AI launch and the go-to-market that goes along with it. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of the launch, Matt, I'd like you to share a little bit more about, one, when this picture was taken, if it wasn't yesterday, and then two, just sort of the journey that you've been on with Celigo since then.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I went back through the archives, and this photo was actually taken in 2017, the year I joined Celigo, and on my first visit to our engineering lab in Hyderabad. That is Shamanad, a big sort of one of the kind of symbolic gateway to Hyderabad, which I think was symbolic in its own way in terms of me going through a gateway into the world of cloud-based integration and now automation. And it's been quite the journey. I've aged a little bit. I'm going to blame my kids and not Celigo. I think I still have that shirt and wear it, so my kids will probably be upset for me to admit that. But it has been a journey, and what I'm really excited to share with you today is how we are sort of building on all that history and that heritage. So this was 2017, but in 2019, we actually made our first foray into the world of AI, and that was with our pioneering error management capabilities, where before it was cool, we were using a special computer filled with GPUs and using that to build a machine language model using natural language processing to classify error messages. And that was really the beginning of the first class support we have for errors in the platform. And in fact, later when I do a bit of a demo, I'm going to start there and actually build on top of what was started all those years ago. So it's been an amazing journey, and really pleased to be able to share some of the improvements we've made along the way, and particularly with the launch that we made on the 31st of March. And that's what we're here to talk to you about. So perhaps before we get into that, it's worth thinking about, what were we responding to? We'd obviously seen a lot of noise, a lot of hot air sometimes perhaps in the market about what's going on with AI. But we needed to take a look at it from our point of view. And, what we noticed is that there was a lot of, mandates perhaps from organizations, where their higher ups or their boards were telling them, hey, you need to be doing more with AI. And yet there wasn't a whole lot of planning. No one quite knew what that meant. But one of the things as we dug into that was that we saw businesses having to sort of switch backwards and forwards between, emerging agentic technology and their integration platform in order to get the job done. And that was sort of creating, quite a bit of friction. And we had a vision for how these things ought to be able to coexist peacefully and really to enable a much more empowered organization. And I think that leads into the second point, which is about who actually does the work. We've long prided ourselves in accessibility to what we would call business technologists, people in the organization that maybe they don't have computer science degrees, or maybe they're not, deep in technology, but still able to get a job done. And so we saw this opportunity because, IT continues to be under pressure, even with all this automation, to make their jobs a bit easier. I think the demand has continued to go up. So they were the twin factors that we were seeing, this need to marry agentic workflows and what we would call deterministic workflows. Especially ones at scale that we at Celigo have long specialized in. And then also the desire to bring more, a broader range of personas into the business and enable them to take advantage of this technology. So the way we responded was to bring new capabilities to the market, But what's important for us is that it's fully integrated, built on the same stack. One thing I'm very proud of at Celigo, so I joined in 2017. The platform was about 6 months post GA at that point. And we have evolved without having to do complete rebuilds, right? We have steadily evolved and broadened the footprint of the platform. We've seen how well it's responded as we've gone from application integration to B2B integration to API-based integration, and now into the world of AI. It's been a fairly organic experience. And there's a lot of value that gives us that consistency throughout the platform. So MCP Server builds on a lot of the existing capabilities we have, including support for APIs and tools. And Agent Builder, particularly with a focus on how agents can be incorporated into otherwise deterministic workflows to get this balance, the determinism with the agency that I spoke about before. And the other part of this, of course, is a fully natural language-based way of interacting with the platform, which we believe for many users will become their default user experience. Internally, some of you have seen that we were referring to this as Copilot. We decided to go with a brand name, Celigo Ora, which is from a Latin root meaning to speak. It also happens to mean now in Italian, which I kind of like, this idea of moving now, and Ora will help you do that. So Chris, why don't you take us through the first couple of these, and we can share more with the audience we've gathered here today.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So as Matt highlighted, there's 3 core features that make up this launch. So the first is MCP Server. So how we want you to think about that is it's the common standard and protocol that allows any agent, whether it's built in Claude, ChatGPT, or some sort of existing framework, to reach into your enterprise systems and do so securely. Next is Agent Builder. So that's where you can actually construct and build goal-driven AI agents in Celigo, define what they're trying to accomplish, give them tools, set guardrails, pick your model, and deploy. And then the final piece that Celigo Ora, which is going into beta, is that historically building and managing automation required deep technical expertise. You needed specialists. With Ora, it's embedded into the platform itself, and it's really meant to provide a different interface for you to build and manage automations that removes the technical barrier and instead is accessible via natural language. So I think you'll really enjoy that demo that Matt is sharing later on. It's an awesome, awesome new part of our platform. Before I get into MCP Server, if anything that we showed today sparks an idea or you just want to learn a little bit more, there's a button on the top of the screen you can hit to see a demo of Celigo and book a deeper AI strategy session. So MCP Server. First, before we get into the details, have any of you ever used an MCP server before, or is this completely new to you? I would love to get a gauge for sort of where our audience sits at today, and I will view the results as they come in. Okay. So I see a little bit of a mix between never used it, heard about it, but haven't implemented it, and starting to use it. But it does look like starting to use it and never used it are highest. So this seems like a relatively new topic for everyone. And that's great to hear because I think there's a lot of ways that Celigo's MCP server can help you. Okay. So with MCP, I'm sure you've probably heard the word. As I mentioned, it doesn't sound like it's a completely foreign concept, even if you haven't actually implemented it yet. But Model Context Protocol is a standard that's gaining a lot of momentum in the AI world. I think it initially came into fruition through a white paper that Claude published about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And what it is essentially it's a standard a universal plugin for connecting AI agents to your systems, so AI has real context on your business. So at its core, with Celigo, we're taking all these assets that you've built already within our platform, your APIs and your tools, and exposing them so any AI agent can understand them and can call them to perform various tasks. And we're doing all that with authentication as well as auditing built in. So security is not an afterthought. You can also define composite services. So those are purpose-built combinations of data and actions across multiple systems. So a sales agent might need access to a very specific set of data, including CRM information, order history, contract status, all in one clean output without ever needing to touch finance systems or other applications in your tech stack that it has no business seeing. The point is that each agent is getting access to exactly what it needs, nothing more, and the data is trimmed down to reduce your token costs. Most importantly here, it's working with any MCP compatible AI. So we know that there's sort of an intense war on the LLM front. Some people like ChatGPT, some like Claude, some like Gemini. Whatever your team is using or building agents in, we're not asking you to bet on one AI provider. We're allowing you to connect into all of those agents with the MCP protocol. Next, so what is the actual business value of MCP? One, it helps you move a lot faster, right? Instead of having to build custom connectors so your agent can talk to a Salesforce or a Marketo or a NetSuite, you have Celigo's connectivity, which is over 1,000 apps from day one, and you can quickly build an MCP server on top of those to expose the relevant information. Next is governance. So we have authentication in place. We have audit trails out of the box. So your IT teams don't have to chase this down after the fact. And it's a little daunting to expose your critical information to an agent. So they can do that in a way that they're comfortable with. And then the final piece is future proofing. Like I mentioned before, you're not locked in on the AI side. You can swap models or add new ones without having to rebuild your backend or connectivity layer. Now, next, we will be going into a quick demo. Just share my screen really quickly of our MCP server. So as you can see here, I don't know how many of you feel this in your day-to-day, but there's a lot of time where our go-to-market team spends just trying to get the right answer out of their applications, whether it's sales reps unaware of deals sitting in the CRM or marketing unable to prove campaign attribution. The point is it exists, but getting to it is painful. So with MCP Server connected to your CRM and to your marketing stack, your team can get accurate real-time answers without having to switch tools or write queries or wait for reports. And that's all with natural language. As you can see right here, that was MCP access via Claude. Using Celigo's connectivity, all of your apps can be selectively exposed to the LLM rather than piecing together disjointed MCP offerings. So you can choose to expose specific information as well as add tokens. So imagine here a sales manager who's able to ask direct questions to the LLM on how the quarter's going, or someone in marketing operations trying to get a breakdown of campaign source. You're able to do all of that through the LLM interface. And again, on the back end, that is connected to your MCP server and your APIs that exist and tools that exist within Celigo. So I know that was quick. We're happy again to go into more details and walk you through the specifics on MCP via a demo. You can, again, click that link on the top right side to schedule a demo with our team. And this isn't all theoretical. This is an example of a customer who saw a lot of success already with MCP, even though it was pretty recently announced. So this is the CIO of Egnyte, which is another software company, speaking to how MCP provides a standardized framework to connect all of their agents to their broader enterprise tech stack. And doing that with the right security and governance in place where him and his colleagues' minds are at ease. Okay, so before we were talking more about connecting external agents to your connectivity, to your systems that exist within Celigo. Agent Builder is about natively building agents within Celigo. Which brings me to my next poll. When it comes to AI agents, what is your biggest concern right now? And I know that might change over the next few months. We'll give you a few minutes to go through the poll. Okay, really interesting. It seems like governance and guardrails and trust is the most important. We have seen that a lot from our customers, especially when agents are accessing critical information, like the use case that we'll be talking about later, where it's an error inquiry agent that is working on all of the back-end financial details for your clients. And then it looks like next up was connectivity or complexity of connecting agents to systems. Okay. So yeah, we will get into all of that, but those are very much in line with what we're seeing out of our customer base as well. You want to move as quickly as possible, but you don't want to compromise on security and governance. And the more agents that you build, the more operational overhead you have, and the greater risk there is of potential security, governance, or compliance issues at scale. So this is a quick look at how our Agent Builder UI is configured, as you can see here on the right-hand side. So what we're allowing you to do is compose agents in a low-code way that can reason, make decisions, and ultimately take action across your systems. We have a few cool features built in, like evaluations on different LLM models, where you can essentially A/B test and check out which LLM performs the best for your specific use case based on things like latency and quality of response. You can enforce policies through guardrail steps that can check the agent's inputs or outputs and make sure that they're adhering to your internal policies before anything executes. So I know guardrails was very important to people based on that poll. You could do things like checking for hate speech, checking for PII data to make sure that you can sanity check the agent's inputs and outputs. And then finally, there is full traceability. So we have functionality called Agent Trace that actually walks through every AI decision that was made and why the agent took certain actions. Finally, there's the model side. So you can choose to bring your own key, your own subscription to OpenAI, for instance, or you can access models through Celigo, what we call Celigo AI, where we can go out and provision an account for you. OpenAI is available today, with Gemini and Anthropic coming very soon down the pipeline. So stay posted there. And we'll actually be doing a quick demo of this use case, but just so you can see the different pieces of the agent. One is a set of instructions, which basically tells the agent how it's supposed to act and what its role is within an organization. Because remember, it's replacing tasks that are typically done by a human that require real judgment. Next, it's giving the agent a set of tools that ultimately have to do with the tasks that it needs to perform. So here it's an AR agent. We're giving access to things like sending an account statement, sending bank details to customers. Next, we're selecting a model. Like I mentioned, we could use Celigo AI or bring our own key. Here we've opted to leverage Celigo AI, which is GPT-5 Pro. And then finally, we're able to set guardrails and make sure that the agent is adhering to our own internal policies. Now, a few of the business benefits of our agent builder. One, it's very easy to build with, and you can rapidly construct new agents that can quickly connect into your tech stack versus having to create these through custom code or build them homegrown. Next, you're able to really understand which models perform the best for your use case. There could be some models that are overkill, where you maybe need something more simplistic and they're consuming a lot of tokens, or other cases where you need deeper thought involved and that model makes the most sense. Either way, you can A/B test, compare things like latency, outputs, and token costs, and make the best decision for that scenario. And then finally, enterprise-grade trust. You have guardrails that can validate the inputs and outputs of your agents. So you can make sure that there's an additional layer of safety and security there. This is actually a quick look at the compare models feature of the agent. So what this is doing is you can run the same scenario against multiple models simultaneously. Here you're seeing, I believe it's GPT-4 Mini, GPT-5 and GPT-5 Pro side by side. And you can then look at the output quality, token consumption, and latency. So you can make an informed decision on what actually fits your business requirements the best for your budget, and you're kind of eliminating the guesswork there. All right. We will be going into a quick demo of now our agent builder. So first, this is a use case that we've built internally, where we had a problem with our AR inbox growing out of control, which I'm sure you can all relate to. Here you can see a customer requesting bank details and us having a draft automatically created with the right attachments. And this is all done on the back end with our agent builder. So as you can see right there, there's an AR inquiry agent step that's been added. And typically, this would be a manual process, right? Where you have someone from your team having to triage or receive invoice information from NetSuite and then pre-draft an email, which is annoying and also very repetitive, should be automated. As you can see here, this is not automated. So instead, we've created this agent that listens to the inbox, identifies common requests, like send me my W-9, send me my invoice. It then calls the associated tools in NetSuite, retrieves the right information, downloads it, and it drafts an email response. You can see here the configuring of the agent input and the output. And you can also add guardrails. So this is what I mentioned before. You can choose one of our pre-existing guardrails, or you can sort of build your own. And then there's a human in the loop. So at the end, we don't trust our agent to send the emails. They create a draft, and then the human is checking over the draft, making sure it makes sense, and then hitting send. So it's been a huge time save for our team. Again, we're happy to discuss this if you wanted to schedule a deeper session and even show you a demo of what it could look like within your own environment. And here are just a few use cases that we've seen customers use or customers build agents around. And as you can see, it's the whole gamut across pretty much every line of business. So AR inquiry, that's what we just mentioned. We've also seen fulfillment response, customer 360, RFI response, expense review. So really, wherever these manual, mundane processes that still require some level of human judgment sit, we've seen customers come together, realize that they could solve it with Celigo's Agent Builder, and really hit the ground running. I can imagine that over the next few months, the screen will get, or the slide will get bigger and bigger. And it's always really interesting to hear the new use cases that customers come up with. And this is actually the first time we will be announcing this. So don't spread it. This is, you're the first to hear. But we will be doing an agent boot camp in May. It's available for customers only. And what it is it's essentially training from our team and then help with implementation over the course of a week, where we'll actually go out and build one of these pre-built agents within your account. So it'll be an awesome opportunity to learn how to build with Agent Builder and then also leave with a fully fledged enterprise ready agent. And we'll be reaching out to everyone who joined this webinar first. I know there are limited spots, so keep your eyes open for an email from us on the bootcamp if you're a customer and you would like to attend. All right. Now I will be handing things over to Matt, who will be talking a little bit more about Celigo Ora.
All right. Thank you, Chris, and thanks for going through those demos. There's a lot going on there, and many of you will notice how seamlessly this fits within everything we already have in the platform. An agent just shows up as a step in a flow, guardrails similarly, right? So that was a really important thing for us. It's about being kind of organic, and I think that's what we've achieved with Ora as well. So I am actually going to get into a demo in just a second, but before I do, let me just lay the groundwork here. First off, Celigo Ora it's sitting by your side as a teammate to help you across the board, not just for build, not just for explanation, but really across the board. When we started on our AI journey with our co-pilot, we started with the smallest problems first because AI couldn't be trusted at that point given the model limitations to do anything more complicated. But we have expanded beyond that now, and you'll see it in action shortly. So first off, natural language execution, speak in natural terms. In fact, speak the language of your choice. I'll show that a little later as well. It covers the entire platform from end to end. Again, it's not just for the build, not just for the maintenance, but really everything. Even like, hey, go ahead and add users to my account with these permissions. For action and for guidance, it's actually very, very good even now with design. Say, hey, I'm thinking about building this. How should I think about it? And because it understands the nature of integration, it has access to the web, it can go out and read the documentation, and it understands our flow and API model, it's able to lay things out very well, let you think through the design, and then once you have the design, either you could build it yourself or have the AI do it for you. And part of that's possible is because it's a collection of agents that have underlying specialties. So there's a dedicated agent that understands handlebars, which is our templating mechanism, an agent that understands how we use JavaScript in the platform, an agent for error management, an agent that deeply understands everything that we know about how we integrate with, say, NetSuite and Salesforce, and so on, right? Understands our role-based access control model. And an Uber agent then sort of navigates and routes work to the specialist sub-agents. And I think you'll see that in action during the demo. Very good at troubleshooting and analysis. That's where I'll spend most of my time in the demo here. And we've designed it to be safe by design in that it won't take action without the user explicitly accepting. Because at the end of the day, the user has to be responsible for what's happening. I don't think any of us are quite ready to hand the automation keys fully over to the AIs. Maybe that'll happen in the future, and maybe we'll even have a way for you to work that way with Ora. But for now, we think it's best, especially during this beta period, for the user to be, explicit in choosing what it should do. So, how the sausage is made a little bit. It's a natural language interface, and it's working through essentially as a series of specialty agents. Now, it's in beta, and I expect we'll stay in beta through the next couple of months. We really want to, build everyone's confidence in this before we say it's generally available. But it is an open beta. We are confident enough in it. And again, but it's safe by design. It's not going to make changes on its own. we're confident that you can at least get started with it. And I think I'll show you a pretty compelling use case today. So again, it's really understanding what the user is asking for in the context of what the platform can do, and then finding the right specialty agent under the hood, and then sort of working through problems end to end. And what we're already seeing, we have non-specialist users finding success with Ora today. And in fact, customers that are maybe dealing with a lot of errors are seeing benefits in particular, where before they might have been dependent on scarce IT resources to help with analysis and debug. They're now able to do more of that themselves. Can lead to improved resolution times, and really make it much easier for the entire organization to get engaged with automation, right? It's sort of democratizing a little bit. And, if we can get to a point where with the right guardrails in place, IT still defines the rules, who has access to what, the role-based access control. But within those constraints, if I'm a monitor-only user, okay, I can go off and figure out what's going on with the flow. If I have, right access within a certain, workspace or given integrations, I can go ahead and do that, right? And that's really what it's about. I think enabling more parts of the business to get started with automation, and we're confident that it's going to drive much more successful usage of the platform in new use cases. And I should add too, as the platform continues to grow, it understands B2B. It already knows about MCP and agents, and it knows about lookup caches and so on, right? So it will continue to stay up to date. And as time goes by, I'm sure we'll be looking to add even more specialty sub-agents because it's an architecture that we're confident in. All right, so I'm going to get into a live demo here. So I'm going to stop the sharing and switch over to my desktop. All right, and I am, maybe without the safety net here, I am actually showing you our own instance of Celigo Inc., right? The Celigo on Celigo. We run our entire business on this. This happens to be for our professional services team. And I was doing a bit of prep for this and noticed a flow that has some errors in it. And I wanted to use Ora to help us out. This particular flow is dealing with synchronizing Jira tasks with Smartsheet. So Smartsheet's for project tracking. Jira is for individual task management. We use Smartsheet in our communication with our customers. So in this case, I don't know exactly what the flow is doing. That's less of the point here. But to be able to pick up queries coming from a Slack channel and process them. But on this very first step here, we see there's an error. And well, I'm not overly, I want to dig into the error itself here. We'll go down here. And there are 4 errors. They all look kind of similar. We can see what the request was, and we can see what the response was, and we can see the error fields. So here I am. I don't know too much about this, but maybe Ora can help. So Ora's access just down here, the little sparkle icon, and it can do a range of different things. And I could even, if I'm not sure, I could just ask it what it's capable of. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this error, and I'm going to say, tell me about this error and how I might fix it. All right, and off it goes. Now, this is where I do a little tap dancing. However, I'm going to tell you a little bit of what's happening. First off, notice I was able to say this error. I didn't have to point at a given URL or anything like that. It's context aware. So if I was on a different screen, I could say, this export or this script, and it would know what I'm talking about. Next, you see, it's actually because, you think about what a human user would do when looking through an error. The first thing they're going to do is like, well, hang on, was this working before? Did it change recently? And maybe that's why it's broken. And you can see it's done historical analysis. It's found similar errors, but it also noticed that the flow had succeeded in the last 21 days. So it's not like it's been broken forever. And it's sort of then reasoned that, there's something going on. It's now looking to see, it's reaching out to the web to look at the documentation from Smartsheet to try to understand, because this particular 404 error is coming from Smartsheet. And now it's going through its rationale. It's actually found various documents which I could look up, go look into myself. And now it's going, okay, it's done all the research. This is what a human user would do, and it would take some time. I mean, we've all been there. It does take time. And now, oh, well, that's actually quicker than when I was rehearsing this earlier. So it's come back with specific recommendations. It's thought about it for just over a minute. And it says, hey, this looks like a record-specific issue, which is really important. This isn't the sort of thing that is like systemic in the flow. This is particular because it noticed that the flow was running most of the time, just failing occasionally. And then it says, well, what it typically means that in Smartsheet, okay, it means that either the Smartsheet that's being referenced doesn't exist, we don't have access to it or whatever. And then it's proposing a number of options for fixing it. And of course, just like you've seen with your LLM, you can, choose to go into more detail if you like. We won't get into that, but you get the point. Now, we've seen this be, quite successful because it understands our error management. I could actually say, assign all errors like this to me, and it should, do the search. It's thinking about it. And it should go ahead and it noticed there are 4 errors. Here's an example of it asking to, confirm before it does anything. I click accept and it just repaints the screen and you now see these 4 errors are assigned to me. Now, it might be that in a different type of use case, maybe it's a bunch of errors coming from a system across multiple flows. It could even work across all those flows at the same time, right? So we have other options, of course, we could do with error management, but it's just an example of the power. This is very much the way humans go around resolving errors. But back to where I started from when I showed that photo from the archive from 2017, we've been working on error management for a long time, and this is a great use case for Ora because we're building on a foundation that is fairly unique in the market, and now we're able to layer on top all the additional power of this conversational AI. And just for demonstration purposes, I'm on day 1400 of Italian on Duolingo, right? So I'm going to say, ask in my own language here, possiamo parlare italiano? Can we speak Italian? Sì, certo, possiamo parlare in italiano. So we've seen on the back end, Turkish, Chinese, Japanese, French, Spanish, and more. So there's no language limitation, and that's not us, of course. That's the LLM under the hood that's bringing that power. But we don't have at this point, localized documentation and a fully internationalized user experience. But Ora actually gives this as kind of a bonus, right? So I see that in the way that the product's being used already, and I'd encourage you to check that out as well. So I'm going to stop the demo here and go back to sharing the slides. And there we go. And I think that leads us to sort of our wrap up and before we get into to Q&A. All right. So Chris, are you going to take us through some of that here?
Yes. And I will just say we got no shortage of questions. So if we don't get to yours to answer, we will definitely follow up with you over email and we will get to as many as we can. So this is one, I think, Matt, you can take this one, but what if I have a workflow that's not fully agentic and has rule-based components to it?
Oh, yeah, that is perfect for us, right? And I think many use cases are like that. I think the example you showed earlier, Chris, of the accounts receivable email inquiry, it's deterministic. Read an email from an inbox, maybe even given the domain of the customer, look them up in a system of record so we get the ID. So that part's deterministic. Likewise, maybe all the way downstream could be deterministic. But what the email is asking about, imagine this in a customer sentiment example. Hey, is this customer happy or are they angry with us on a scale of, 1 to 10? So that, of course, is a bit of an LLM step. But then the actions that you take from that, there was a question offline about MCP. this is a great example where you build a set of tools and each of those tools might actually be deterministic. Hey, when I get an unhappy customer, I'm going to do step 1, 2, 3, 4. If I get a happy customer, I'm going to do these steps and include, hey, write us a reference on G2 Crowd or something, right? So it is this balance. It's not one or the other. And we see obviously the bar being raised in terms of, what are the sorts of use cases that can be applied. I should mention, when you showed earlier the agent builder, agents themselves are API addressable. Our whole platform is built on APIs. So for the techies in the audience, they can be kind of decoupled from flows and you could post directly to them if you wanted to do that. And we have other capabilities coming soon that I think will expand the ways in which these agents can be deployed.
Yeah, and that is actually a good segue to this next question that I see. It's from Katani. Can an agent be built to wait on a data change in a system? So I think that's saying listen for a webhook. And then if necessary, kick off a Celigo flow to load that data.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, waiting on a data change in the system, something somewhere has got to be reading that data. So yes, as you suggest, it would be a webhook, or if it didn't support a webhook, some polling-based process where the very first thing it did would look at the data, make a decision about it, and then based on that, either invoke another flow or continue on down a flow. So the short answer to Katani's question is a resounding yes. Can definitely do that.
Yep. And yeah, we've seen plenty of use cases for Agent Builder that are started with a webhook. So if you want to discuss any of those in more depth, we are happy to. So how do guardrails work in Agent Builder so the agent do something it's not supposed to? So I think, they're just asking, is the purpose of guardrails to prevent the agent from doing something or taking some action that it's not supposed to?
Yeah, and so guardrails are just another kind of flow step, and they can be used before an agent, after an agent, and in fact can even be used outside agent contexts entirely. And we have a few different things out of the box, including PII. Don't leak social security numbers. Like if it notices anything there, it will kind of isolate the data. So one use case is you want the guardrail before the agent because maybe you're very particular about not sending any PII to an agent because the agent's going to go to an LLM, right? So that's one thing. But then also it could be a guardrail to double check that the agent isn't doing something you didn't want it to do downstream. So we have both, out of the box things like, hate speech and or foul language, that kind of stuff, PII, social security numbers, and various identifiers across the world. And we also have the ability to do those in natural language as well. So I wrote one, strip out any kanji characters, for example, any Japanese characters that you might see in any text string throughout. So they're very flexible that way, and again, can be applied either before or after the agent.
Thank you for that one. And to close out the loop on Agent Builder, and I think I can take this one. What's the learning curve for someone who's never built an agent before? How technical do you have to be to get started? So our Agent Builder is designed to be very easy to use. We actually had an internal hackathon competition where we had stakeholders from pretty much every line of business build agents over the course of a week or two. And pretty much everyone was able to create an interesting agent in production. And I think that's a similar mentality that we're taking towards this agent boot camp, where within a week, we expect you to teach you how to use Agent Builder and together stand up a production level agent. So the technical level, it's a low code step in the workflow, and it should be relatively easy to build, even for someone who's maybe more on the operations or citizens technologist side and isn't a developer in IT. And that leads me to the next question. There was a question directly on the agent boot camp that's happening in a few weeks. is it similar to the Celigo Masterclass, where it teaches you how to use all the tools? I would say it's similar in that it's instructional. The main difference is going to be you'll actually learn directly through our SC and our post-sales team with live sessions throughout the week. And they will help you build the agent in your account as well. So I think it's a little bit more, I would say, intensive. It is a full week to devote to it. And these are live sessions where the goal is to get you fully live with a production agent by the end of it. So we haven't really done anything like this before. I think it should be super interesting. But for that reason, we have a pretty finite number of spots each week because it is so much one-on-one attention. So again, keep your eyes peeled and open for an email coming your way, because we are sending invitations to this list first. Again, assuming that you are a customer. You do need to be a customer to participate. Okay, this is actually a very good question, because I think there's a lot of confusion out there, and it's a very new protocol too. This is from Harika. Is the MCP server feature already available in Claude, or does it require a paid subscription? I don't see it under the connectors. So I can take a quick stab, and then Matt, feel free to fill in any color that you have. But MCP server is it's built and hosted in Celigo. So you would create an MCP server within the Celigo interface that would be that would have either APIs or callable tools attached to it. And then you would actually, through Claude or through whatever the agent is, connect into the MCP in Celigo through authentication. So this isn't a Anthropic or Claude MCP or an OpenAI MCP. It's a Celigo MCP that you can call once you authenticate from all of those LLMs.
Yeah, I would just add there, MCP is a protocol. Obviously, there's a client side and a server side, and typically in this, Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT will act as the client. And in this scenario, the Celigo services you expose are exposed via an MCP server. So you build tools, whether that's a lookup into your CRM, or the ability to raise a ticket in your ITSM system. Expose those services via an MCP server, and then you connect the MCP server to the MCP client, right? So in that case, it would be configuring Claude to talk to a custom MCP server. So that's, and you can find the MCP servers under the AI Studio on the left nav of the platform.
Yep, good point. And that, again, is an important distinction there between the server and the client. I think there were a few questions on Ora that I wanted to get to, just so we can cover questions across every one of the products. Like I mentioned, we will follow up over email if we're not able to get to your question. There were just a lot, which is good. We love the engagement. First one, I know Ora can be used to build flows, but can it also be used to manage flows?
Well, I hope the question came in before I did the demo, because hopefully we saw that. Yeah, so it can definitely be used to handle errors. We have other capabilities that we're looking at to do even more autonomous, auto handling of errors, but potentially using Ora. What I demonstrated was an explicit, look at a particular error and work through it. But yeah, it can certainly be used for that, and looking forward to seeing what successes our customers have with that.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really important point, that while the build process is something that Ora can definitely do, it doesn't stop there. And I think that's a difference between us and maybe some other Copilot offerings you might see in the space. Is the goal with Ora is that anything you can do through the UI, whether you're building, managing, admin, you'll be able to do through Ora. And so when you think about the power that gives you to not only build assets, but to manage them, to assign errors, to add new users to your platform, to rearrange your projects. You can do all of that via natural language. It is your interface through which you can access the whole platform. So I think that is really important, and it's pretty differentiated in the market. Now, this is kind of an extension of the last question. Can I train Ora? And I think, Matt, you just touched on this a little, but can I train Ora to automatically assign errors to myself or another teammate? In addition, am I able to assign any errors to Ora itself?
Not yet, but it's definitely the direction we're heading. I think for some of it, there's always a temptation to think every problem is now an AI problem. There is certainly a whole class of problems like the example I showed. Maybe just detecting a 404 error from Smartsheet doesn't require AI, right? That might just be a basic rule that could be defined. So we're looking at, set technology aside, we're looking at that sort of holistically and looking at both, proactive error management, doing even more, building on this foundation, as well as, essentially being able to define rules. So stay tuned for more on that.
Great. Thank you for that. I think we got to most of the questions. There are probably a few that will follow up on email. But yeah, thanks again, everyone.
Yeah, if I may, there was one I just want to answer. I don't know how to. Let's see. But it was a question, and Alexia on the back end can probably help us, from David asking about training. Is there a risk that selecting one of our OpenAI options would mean that we're somehow publicly training the LLM? The answer to that is no. And our Trust Center, trust.celigo.com, if you're a customer, you have access to that. You can read more about it. But the short answer to that is no. We are using an OpenAI enterprise license that specifically prohibits the use of any data to train the AI. So I just want to be really clear on that. It's an obvious question, and we take that very seriously. So I want to assure you all that we are good and well behaved in that respect.
Yep, that's a good point.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, I think we are off the hot seat for now. I wanted to thank everyone for taking the time to join the webinar. As always, feel free to follow up with me or Matt if you have any questions. It's firstname.lastname@Celigo. And we will see you soon. Thanks, everyone.